What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Dude Hine Show. Joining me in today's video is Frank Laplaca of Cincy Bengals, the Unofficial Bengals Podcast. How you doing today, Frank?
Jordan, I'm doing great after this huge win. I'm so excited about the future, and I just can't wait for this week. You know, as we talked about before we went on the air, we're one game away from the Super Bowl. And to everyone out there, I know you don't see my face yet. I'm still waiting to reveal it. I appreciate you bearing with me. Maybe if the Bengals get in the bowl, that'll be the big time to get the big face reveal. So, yeah, glad to be on here, Jordan.
I feel like if the Bengals go to the Super Bowl, I mean, that's a perfect opportunity. Like, you got to have a big reveal for a big reason. You can't really get much bigger than the Super Bowl unless we end up winning the Super Bowl. But, it is crazy. We have 2 down, 2 to go mentality at this point. I really cannot believe we are in this situation that we are. We have talked numerous times about, we both kind of thought this was how it was supposed to be next season. Here we are, 1 game away from being in a Super Bowl. It is surreal. It does not seem real at all. And, with the game, this past week when we were able to defeat, the Titans, we were able to defeat the Titans 19-16. So, Frank, what were your kind of, initial reactions towards the Bengals' upset win against the Titans this past Saturday?
Well, first off, I don't think the national media is giving us credit. Everyone's talking about the Chiefs win over the Bills, and that was a great game. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. That was very, very exciting. And the Bengals have kind of become an afterthought, unfortunately. And I'm not going to complain about it. Who cares about the national media? But what we in reality did is we went on the road and beat the number 1 seed. I mean, we're just, whatever's put in front of us, we're accomplishing. So no one has anything on us. This team is really on the road to great things. The defense played so well. We all know the narrative with Joe Burrow getting sacked 9 times and still throwing for, 348 yards. Mixon didn't rack up a whole bunch of yards, but he had that amazing run. There were so many good individual performances. And, we'll talk about the offensive line, I guess, a little bit later. But there was a lot to love about this game. And, Jamar Chase is just special. And, I could rant about every player on this team. But what I want to sum it up as is I'm just really proud of what the team did. And it's so gratifying and so exciting to witness.
Yeah, it is so crazy because, not many people outside of Cincinnati had us winning this game. I saw a graphic on Good Morning Football. The only person to have us winning this game against Tennessee, I believe, was Kay Adams, which to me is kind of crazy because, in my opinion, I feel like Good Morning Football is one of the only few shows that really does not talk bad about the Bengals. And, not many people expected us to win. In my opinion, looking at this game, it's one of those situations where you try not to be biased, but when you see what the Bengals have done this season, they were fully capable of winning this game against the Titans. In this game, I really don't know why, people were picking the Titans to win this game. I know the spread, I believe it started off at 3, and towards the kickoff day, I believe it went up to 4, which was kind of surprising because this Bengals team, we are on fire. We literally, in my opinion, I know it sounds crazy, are probably the best team in the league when everybody is fully healthy and when we are, on point on offense and defense. And looking at this game, it was great, on defense. Our defense really stepped up again. 2 straight playoff games we've allowed less than 20 points. That is hard to do in the NFL, especially when you're playing teams who are good. The fact that they made it in the postseason. Our offense, Burrow was phenomenal, but over 300, controversial pick. I don't think that was an interception. But they get sacked, 9 times, and still win, throw for over 300. I don't know if you can name one. You can maybe name 1, 2 at the most quarterbacks in the NFL who can win a game while getting sacked 9 times, throwing for 300 yards. I would put Burrow up there and maybe Patrick Mahomes. And, those are the quarterbacks, with the Bengals and Chiefs doing a great matchup this week. It's so weird because we just got our first playoff victory in 30 years, against the Raiders. And as soon as we won that game, there's another narrative that shifts to where, the Bengals haven't won a road victory in the playoffs in franchise history. Well, we just done that. We just won our playoff game for the first time in 30 years. It's frustrating. We were talking about it before the show that people are still doubting us, but at the same time, we are continuing to prove them wrong. The underdog mentality at this point has basically, been a big part of our season, which I don't get how you can possibly have an underdog mentality for a team. And I don't get how a team could be an underdog when you have a top 5 quarterback right now in Joe Burrow as your starting quarterback. It is crazy. I cannot believe this. We played great, and I cannot wait for this week, against Kansas City. So when you look at this game against the Titans, obviously we were able to pull off the victory. What were some things that you think we maybe need? Obviously, the offensive line's one, but what do you think some things that we need to work on for us to beat Kansas City this week?
Okay, well, there's a lot of different aspects. It is the obvious thing is the offensive line, and it was really across the board. You want to say that Adeniji and Prince struggled, and they did mightily. But, Jonah had his issues. Spain had issues, which is rare for him. Hopkins had a couple plays that weren't in his favor. And a lot of it wasn't the guys getting physically beat. And that was happening. But a lot of times they were getting beat scheme-wise and mentally. So I think going into the Chiefs game, we have to be prepared for that. We have to, we can stalemate those one-on-one matches. But if we're going to have mental lapses where they can do stunts and twists and various blitzes, send one more than we have blocking, that's going to be a big issue. And some of the ways to defeat that, I think, is going 5 wide and letting Joe Burrow get the ball out of his hands in the second and a half. We were doing it last game, even despite all that pressure, and that was one of the things that was working. Aside from that, there weren't many holes. I'd like to see Kevin Huber punt a little bit better. I mean, I'm a big Huber fan. I really respect him, and he's been a stalwart of this team for a long time. I mean, but if we're going to nitpick on things, obviously the offensive line was the only group that really dropped the ball. But I would say maybe Huber can get some more yards. Coverage-wise, it's going to be tough against the Chiefs because they have so many good receivers. Last time we held Hill and Kelsey, which was very surprising. It almost felt like they were sleepwalking through that game. I couldn't believe that we held both of them, because normally if you hold one, the other one's going to have a big game. And we just did a good job on both of those guys. So it's going to be all hands on deck for them. But then on top of that, the Chiefs have a lot of other good receivers and speed players. Pringle and McCall Hardman, those guys are all capable of doing a lot of damage. Allaire's going to be back. I think one of the hidden weapons that the Chiefs are going to bring out this game, and they started bringing him out the last couple games, is that Jerick McKinnon. It's just something about him. He runs angry. He's not that big of a guy, but he's very, very fast. So I can see them using him out of the backfield like they were doing last game. And that's something that we've had a little bit of problems with this year. So if I'm going to say areas of concern, it's going to obviously be the offensive line and the mental game with the offensive line. And I think it's going to be, Jerick McKinnon could be that X factor as far as, balls out of the backfield and no one can catch him, and, 12 yards here, 15 yards there, and putting you to a slow death. So those are the things that really concern me this game.
It's interesting because when you go back and, look at that Tennessee game, heading into that game, I kept on telling people, if the Bengals are up 10 points, go ahead and book it. The Bengals have won. This type of Titans team is not capable of coming back from a double-digit point deficit because they're not built, that way to come back, because they're a run-first team. And, it's weird because, obviously the Titans came back to tie it, but ultimately we ended up winning that game. And, we held Derrick Henry in check. Everybody's talking about King Henry's back and all that. We held him to just 3 yards per carry. And you look at Ryan Tannehill. I felt like we played great against him. He did have that one great throw to A.J. Brown for a touchdown. But, having 3 interceptions, Ryan Tannehill did. Our defense played really, really good. And, when you look at our defense, it's weird because, we were able to get to Tannehill a couple of times. We played great against the run for our run defense. We forced Tannehill to have 3 turnovers. But when you look at one of our best defensive players, it's so weird. He played not good at all. Chidobe Awuzie, has been our best corner this season. I don't really think it's been much of a debate. Mike Hilton has played good, but Awuzie has just been on a different level. And you see him, and he does not play good. A.J. Brown had over 100 receiving yards this past week on Saturday, and we still were able to get a win in a difficult place to play against the number 1 seed with a team who was not nearly as healthy as they were a couple weeks ago. just getting Derrick Henry back. And so you look at it, there are some good things, there are some bad things. Our defense was phenomenal, I would say, except for Rouzier. And the fact that we still won is fantastic. Then you look at our offense. The offense, the fact that Burrow threw for like 350 is insane. I was talking to somebody after the game. In my opinion, it did not even seem like Burrow threw for 300. It just seemed really weird. And the fact that he threw for, like, I believe you said 348, and, getting sacked 9 times and winning is insane. The offense, 4 field goals in this game, that cannot happen against the Chiefs. We had 4 field goals the game before, against the Raiders. When you look at this Bengals team, our offense is not playing good right now. And the fact that we have won 2 games in the postseason, where some people did not pick us to win either game, and we're still winning despite having 4 field goals in each game, and our offense is not what it should be, honestly, is very encouraging for us Bengal fans, because we know the potential that we have with Joe Burrow as our quarterback, along with Mixon, Chase, Boyd, and Higgins, and Uzama, and, our offensive line. Honestly, I don't think it could possibly get worse than what it was on Saturday. So when you look at it, we won. There was times it didn't look pretty, but there is a lot of encouraging things heading this week as we take on Kansas City.
Yeah, Jordan, there's a lot of stuff to unpack on what you just said. A lot of the points that you made are definitely things that are great talking points. One thing I wanted to back up to is Awuzie. Yeah, he didn't have his best game by any stretch, but there was one thing I noticed about this game. That field was slippery. If you saw a couple of the big plays that Awuzie let up, he actually slipped. One of them he actually fell down on. And you saw T. Higgins slipping a little bit. And the Titans were more used to that field than we were. Maybe it's the cleats that they were wearing. I don't know, but it just felt like we were playing on ice and they weren't. And I think that contributed to some of Awuzie's woes in this game. But I still have a lot of faith in him. And I don't think his game was horrible, but I would attribute some of those bad plays to the field. And I know it sounds like I'm making excuses, but when I did the rewatch, that's one of the things that stood out to me. And then to go back to the offense, and I totally agree with you, we can't go field goal against the Chiefs. I mean, we saw it. These guys can score a touchdown in 13 seconds if they need to. So it's going to have to be touchdowns. And I think a lot of what hurt us, even in the Raiders game, and especially in this game, is we got in the red zone, and then there would be a sack and Joe took a couple bad sacks where he lost 7, 10, 12 yards and in key situations. And I think that knocked us out of the range of getting a touchdown on a lot of those red zone trips. So that's something that we're going to need to fix. When we're in the red zone, offense has to lock down even a little bit more. Maybe the ball has to come out faster. Maybe there's something, maybe throw to the running backs, quick passes like that. But to have Joe Burrow dropping back like that, 7-step drops and getting hit back there is one of the reasons why we had to kick so many field goals. And then the last point I wanted to make based on what you said is, if you think about playoff football, what they always say, there's 2 things that playoff football teams do. And one is play good defense, and 2 is run the ball. So if you look at us versus the Chiefs, just in that capacity, we're not talking about Hill, Kelsey, we're not talking about Chase, we're not talking about Burrow, Mahomes, we're not talking about any of them. If you just say who has the better defense right now, the Bengals or the Chiefs, that's edge Bengals. And if you say who has the better running game per se, that's Mixon over Allaire or McKinnon. So if everything equates to how a normal playoff run and playoff games are, we have the edge in those 2 huge areas.
And it's interesting because you bring up Mixon, and, that's something else. He hasn't, he had that one rushing touchdown this past week. But when you look at a yard standpoint and, some of, at times, even yards per attempt, he hasn't really been like what he has, been at times in the regular season. That's also something else to be encouraging about when you have guys who aren't playing bad, but they can play much better. And if we can just put that together, that would be huge for us. The thing, it's interesting because, I was talking to somebody who was a Chiefs fan earlier today, and, Mixon, like I was saying, he's not playing bad, but, he could play better. When you kind of look at this, Chiefs running back situation, when you have guys like McKinnon and Edwards-Helaire and some other guys like that, I think, those guys are nowhere near Mixon's talent. But I feel like the fact that they have 3 or 4 solid backs is kind of concerning because you can, a guy might have a couple of good plays, a couple 5-yard rushes and then like a screen pass for like 5 yards, something like that. And then, a guy similar to his caliber, similar, build, speed and stuff like that comes in. And he's basically the same guy, but he's completely healthy and his energy is at like 100. So to me, I definitely would, have the Bengals give them the edge at running back by Mixon. But with this Chiefs running back committee that we've seen the past couple of weeks, it's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be tougher for the Bengals to stop it because, we didn't play against Edwards-Helaire in our first meeting. So I think that's kind of something to keep an eye on for this Sunday's game between the Bengals and the Chiefs.
100%. And if you look at the last game against the Chiefs, we struggled against Darrell Williams. And I know he's hurt right now. I'm not sure of his status for this week. But when we played them last, excuse me 1 second. Sorry about that. I couldn't believe how many yards he was getting. I knew he was a decent back, but he was really exploiting us. He had a couple really big runs in that game. So I understand what you're saying about, the 2 to 3 headed monster in the Chiefs backfield. And then to back up to Joe Mixon, I think a lot of his struggles are the offensive line. And I know that seems to be the scapegoat for everything. But if you watch some of these plays, like even against the Raiders last week, it was a 3rd and 1, and he had to fight for his life just to get that first down. And and there was an example there where he was getting hit multiple times before he even got to the line of scrimmage. And there was a couple plays in this game. There was one play in particular where I saw Mixon take 3 hits before he even got to the line of scrimmage. So I think a lot of Joe Mixon's struggles are on the offensive line. Unfortunately, they're just not playing up to par. And I think it's hurting Mixon. Even the great touchdown that he had this game, that play wasn't talked about enough. That was a really special run. It's very hard to be in the red zone and get a 16-yard touchdown where you reverse field. And that's what happened. He's running right. There's absolutely nowhere to run. He bounces it back and just takes off left with speed. And he has the vision of an expert running back. And it was the speed and the vision that took him in and, the tenacity that took him into the end zone. So that was a great play. So he's making good plays in spite of the offensive line. And like I said, they're the easy target, but you can see it. When someone's getting hit before they even get to the line, they can only be so productive.
And, when you look at Mixon, he's kind of struggled because of a poor offensive line, kind of like, Burrow, despite him playing great, his offensive line is still really, really bad. And something else, when you go back and look at the week prior to the Raiders game, we played great the first half, but I feel like the second half, we did not really open our playbook enough. And I feel like that game, when we played the Raiders, I felt like when we were up, 7-10 points, I feel like we were kind of fixating on trying to get the run game going. And that was something that just couldn't work because our offensive line wasn't great that game. And that's part of the reason why I think, the Raiders came back against us. But I feel like, with Mixon, if nothing is going with Mixon, and if we go down early, I would not dislike the idea of start having, Chris Evans out there, have him go for the short 4 or 5 yard passes. Chris Evans to replace Pete Ryan. Pete Ryan's came down on third downs a lot, go out for passes or block. There's a situation where, the running back might go out for a short pass. I think if you put Chris Evans out there, I know we haven't seen him a whole ton this season. He doesn't play a ton of snaps because he's, the third string running back. But I feel like if you put him to the mix and maybe have him go out there and try to get some catches as well, that's something, the Chiefs, they do not have a ton of experience, a ton of, tape on Chris Evans, a guy who hasn't played. So maybe put him to the mix. So and that's another guy you kind of have to stop when you have guys like Chase, Higgins, Boyd, and Uzama. You put Evans out there in the third downs instead of P. Ryan. That's somebody else for Kansas City will have to stop. And I think, that might be a good idea, heading into this Sunday.
Amazing analysis, Jordan. That's what I've been saying the last 2 weeks. It's time to unleash Chris Evans because there's not a lot of tape on him, and he's great out of the backfield. And I think that would be an excellent idea to do this game. I thought we were going to do it against the Raiders, and he only got out there a little bit, normally when they were in 5 wides. But it'd be nice to get him in the backfield and see what he can do out of the backfield. I think one of the things that is keeping him out of the lineup and keeping Perine in the lineup is blocking ability. And, Joe needs all the help that he can get back there with a running back that can block well. I'm not sure on Evans how good a blocker he is or not, because I haven't seen enough of him. I know they really depend on Perine in that role, but I 100% agree with you. It's time to bust out Chris Evans because there's no tape on him.
And it's basically at this point, it's a now or never situation. Like, you're not going to put, Chris Evans out there on like a, third down going out for a pass, like week 3, week 4 against like the Steelers or Jaguars or something like that. A guy who's new to the NFL, a guy who, when he's had his moments and when he's had the opportunity, he's made the most of his opportunity. And I mean, Zach Taylor has to coach pretty much the best game of his life this week. He has to have all the great play calls. There were some good play calls we saw against, the Titans and the Raiders, where we had that one particular play in the Raiders when it was 4th and 1, and they had Chase, that running back, and they had a toss to him to get the first down on 4th and 1. Like, plays like that, you got to be pulling plays you've never done before, get, open, be creative. And Chris Evans would be a great start to have this Bengals offense, to have Evans more involved. Because I really, honestly, when you look at least favorite players for the Bengals, I'm just not a fan of Perine. I've said this before the season started. I know I sound crazy. Before the season started, I said I'd rather have Travion Williams than Samaje Perine. I just do not get the hype with him. I know he might be a good running back at times, getting 4 or 5 yards to carry, something like that. But, his blocking is better than Mixon, but his blocking by no means is great. And I do not want to see Samaje Perine go out on third down at running back instead of Mixon or Chris Evans to go out for a pass, because we already saw what happened this past week when the so-called interception happened, and that gave momentum all the way back to Tennessee and made the game, very close, and a situation that Cincinnati should not have been in if they would not have Perine go out there for a pass. I think Chris Evans, he has to replace Perine in this game and take all of the snaps of Perine that has a catching opportunity for us to really get going and have maybe a different spark in this team.
Totally agreed. And, with Perine, when that play happened, I was like, wow, if we lose this game, they're going to run him out of town. I really did feel bad for him because he's a high-effort guy. He's a team player. And the thing about Perine, they like him on special teams as well. He has, he's the personal protector. He's on a lot of the coverage teams. So he's carved a niche out for this team. But back to our original point, yeah, I think on a key third down, I would rather see Joe Mixon or Chris Evans because there's more potential for a big play.
And, there's so many key points of the game, in this game against Kansas City. Obviously, we have the offensive line, defensive line, our corners got to play great. Our linebackers have to play phenomenal going up against Kelsey. So what are some keys to the game for you? If you had to pick a couple that you really focus on for the Bengals to maybe try to get the upset against Kansas City this week.
Okay, so the main things I was thinking of is if you look at the corners for the Chiefs, you have Snead, Fenton, Hughes, who fell down. He got his ankles broken on that play. Ward is a little bit banged up. I don't know what Tyrann Mathieu' status is. I know he's a safety, but if you just look at their defensive backfield, the 4 corners that I just mentioned, they absolutely cannot match up with Chase, Higgins, and Boyd. It's an absolute winning proposition for us. And they're going to be hypersensitive to Chase because he put up, 260 yards against them last time. And I think even though they're going to be rolling everything to Chase, he's still going to have a big game. But the fact that they're rolling everything to Chase, you're going to see a lot out of Higgins and you're going to see a lot out of Boyd. So that's what I think offensively. And, there's a place for Uzomah in this game too. I know Bolton's having a decent few weeks there as a linebacker for them, but he's still a rookie. And Uzomah has been making key plays all year. So there's a lot. I guess I'm kind of mentioning everything, but I really think that our wide receivers have a huge edge over that defensive backfield. I think that Uzomah is going to be successful, and I think you're going to have to continue using Mixon, even if the run isn't working all the time. You can't just totally get away from it because you need to control time of possession. Now, defensively, it's a mystery to me. I don't know how to stop these guys. Whatever we did last time, we're going to have to approach in a similar way, but that Reed and Bieniemy are going to have a different strategy And we're probably going to see things that we didn't see against them last time because what they did last time didn't work. But one thing that I want to say, and this is an underlying factor that not a lot of people are thinking about, we got to keep track of Mahomes running the ball because it's going to be all hands on deck to cover these great wide receivers and that great tight end. And I can see, our focus on the receiving core and Mahomes taking off for, a first down here and 15 yards there. You saw last game early, he did it. I mean, he ripped off like 68, 69 yards in the last game. So that's another hidden weapon. And I also think we have to get some pressure on him. And if you look at the Chiefs' offensive line, they're great on the interior. The rookie center and Tooney, who we wanted, that would have been a big difference maker for us. All three of their interior offensive linemen are strong. And the guys on the outside aren't bad, but they're more vulnerable. So that plays into our strength. This has to be a Trey Hendrickson game. He's got to make it tough on Mahomes. Hubbard had a good game. He's not really known as a pass rusher. He really showed up the last 2 weeks, and he's got to have his best game ever. So I think there's so many aspects to the Chiefs that it's really hard to give a strategy to it. But we need to see Hendrickson have a monster game. I think it's all going to start there. And on the inside, if DJ Reader continues to play like he did, and the rotation next to him, all those guys, the new guy that they picked up, and even Shelvin had a good game. It was all hands on deck there, but let's let Reader continue to do what he's been doing and see Hendrickson light it up. And those are going to be two big weapons in controlling the Chiefs. But Jordan, and I know you're not going to contain the Chiefs. They're going to score a ton of points. So it's just going to be a matter of us scoring more points than them. And I know that's how you win a football game, but in reality, it's going to have to be punch for punch for punch, and we just can't let up.
Yeah, you mentioned, Patrick Mahomes with, the rushing ability. We really saw that this past week, when they played the Buffalo a couple of days ago. And early on, it seemed like the Bills were kind of getting some pressure towards Patrick Mahomes, and just all of a sudden, he was somehow escaping out of the pocket, getting these rushing yards from 10, 15 yards a carry that we're not really used to seeing Mahomes do. We know that he's capable of it, but, we don't really see him do it often. And, that's something else. His pocket awareness is insane, escaping the pocket and avoiding a sack. He did that so many times against Buffalo, and he did that so many times, a couple when we played, them early on just a month or so ago. We did not get any pressure towards Patrick Mahomes when we did. He avoided sacks. I don't believe we sacked him at all that game. That's something that has to be, a spotlight of our defense. There's so many keys to the game, and if we do this, we should be able to win and all that stuff. But when you look at this, we had to get a stop whenever we can, obviously. But when you look at when we played them, I feel like there's some good things about it because we have to get sacks. I feel like we have to get 2 sacks to probably win this game. And when you look at some guys who are phenomenal for them, obviously Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, and we kind of talked about not long ago, we kind of held them in check, for this game when we played them early on in Cincinnati. Travis Kelce only had 25, receiving yards, and that was Logan Wilson's first game back, coming back from injury, and it was kind of up in the air or not if Logan Wilson was going to play that game. Jermaine Pratt did not play that game, and look at Jermaine Pratt. He's really been picking up the last couple of weeks. Had, I believe, double-digit tackles, and obviously had the game-winning interception against the Raiders. The first game in the playoffs. So when you look at that standpoint, I know it's really way easier said than done type of deal. But I think our defense can deliver when they need to. Because look at that, second half when we played Kansas City. We held Patrick Mahomes like 50 passing yards and 3 points. That doesn't even seem possible to any type of defense. That is just absolutely insane. The second half that we, were so great against Kansas City. And then you look at this offense. When you look at us when we played the Chiefs, Burrow was getting sacked so many times when we played Kansas City early on at the beginning of the game. It seemed like every single play he was getting pressured, sacked, or hit. One of the three. And it was to the point so bad that his nameplate literally fell off of his jersey. But he still played phenomenal, throwing for over 400, 4 touchdowns, turnover-free football. But this offensive line, they don't have to play great. They don't have to play good. Just average. I'm not asking for anything great or good. I just want to see an average offensive line. And I think, we've seen at times where this offensive line can, play good and average. If we have an average offensive line, just giving up a couple of sacks, I think we have a decent chance of winning this game. And then when you look at guys like Chase, Higgins, and Boyd, obviously Kansas City was not able to stop Chase in our first meeting. But let's say even if they have a high safety up on Chase, I mean that's going to leave guys like Boyd and Higgins and Uzama open at times. And it's so weird because I know this might kind of be biased stats, but when you look at Uzama, when Uzama has 35 receiving yards or more in a game, the Bengals are 6-1. When Tyler Boyd has a receiving touchdown in the game, I believe we are 4-1 or 5-1. So I know those. I'm kind of nitpicking stats, cherry picking stats type of deal. But we don't need 100 yards from Boyd, 100 yards from Higgins. Just little things like that. Maybe a short touchdown or 30 or 40 yards here and there from a guy like Chris Evans or a guy like Uzama, kind of taking the pressure off of Chase to really get this offense going. And then if there's a one-on-one opportunity for Chase, I mean, he can, score like we've seen him do the past couple of weeks. So I'm excited about this game. I know it's going to be very difficult to do, but when you look at this game against Kansas City, I really feel like there's more, encouraging things to look at this and more, really interesting things as we take on Kansas City this Sunday. It's going to be a great game, but there has to be several things go our way for us to have a chance to win this game.
100%. And I like those stats that you brought up. I didn't realize the effectiveness when Uzama had a certain amount of yards and Boyd had a certain amount of yards. And I think you're right. Those guys don't need to put up 102 touchdowns each for us to win this game. And some role players getting 40 yards like Chris Evans. Jordan, those are excellent observations. One thing I wanted to circle back to is when we talked about the offensive line, we're going to have to worry about Chris Jones on Adeniji. I think that's going to be one of the key matchups because how good of a game that Simmons had against Adeniji and that side of the line. I think that Jones is just as good, and they're going to be looking to exploit them in the same way. And then last thing I wanted to mention is going back to the last game when you were talking about it, we got to think about it. They were up 14-0, I believe, and we did come back to win it. And when they were up 14-0, I said it out loud about 9 times. I was like, one stop. We just need one stop because we were just going back and forth and scoring, and we needed to stop them once so we could tilt the scale. And now they're chasing us, and we got it that game. And you make great points about Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt not even playing that game. So hopefully with those two guys in the lineup, we're going to get that one stop, and they're going to be chasing us, and we're going to go on to the Super Bowl.
That is just crazy to say. I know I've said this so many times, talking back and forth, but we did not think we'd be this far. And it's interesting because, when you look at this game, it's going to be a phenomenal game. And I really feel like this is going to be a similar situation we played the first time. Whoever has the ball last is going to win this game. Look at the past weekend, in the playoffs. Every single winner of the game, one of the final play of the game, had the ball last. This is not the NFL from 10 to 15 years ago. In today's NFL, if you have a great offense and an okay defense, you will much likely have a better chance to win a Super Bowl rather than a great defense and an okay offense. Look at the Titans. They had a good, really good defense, did an okay offense, and, we knocked them out of the playoffs. So this is going to be a great game. I really feel like whoever has the ball last is going to win this game. It's going to be a high-scoring game. So, Frank, what is your score prediction for the AFC Championship game between the Bengals and the Chiefs?
All right, Jordan. Well, it's going to be score for score, and Joe Burrow is going to throw for a couple touchdowns. We're going to end up with 4 touchdowns. Mahomes is going to do what Mahomes does, and they're going to end up with 4 touchdowns. And then McPherson is going to beat Butker. McPherson's going to have 3 field goals. Butker's going to have 2. 37-34 Bengals onto the promised land.
That is so weird because like I kind of said before the show started, I joined somebody else's podcast earlier today, and there was a Chiefs fan, and then there's a couple other people in it as well. I said 37-34 in that. The person who also picked the Bengals picked 37-34, and then you picked that as well.
Wow.
If that happens, that is insane. 3 different people all picked the Bengals 37-34. That's also going to be my score prediction as well. I mean, the fact that 3 different people picked that, I'm starting to feel pretty confident or lucky or something. But just the way we've played on defense. It's one of those situations where I know this sounds crazy, but, giving up 34 points to the Chiefs, that's not good, but compared to what the Chiefs are capable of, and this defense that, has really been picking up for us the past couple of weeks, and our offense hasn't been going. I know I've said it a couple of times. When our offense is complete and our defense is complete, when we play great football on offense and defense, look at what we've done against Kansas City. Look what we've done against, the Ravens, both games and stuff like that. I really think, agree with you there as well. That's honestly why I kind of picked that pick earlier today, 37-34, was because I honestly think McPherson will make another game-winning field goal. It is so crazy. I cannot believe this. So, this really kind of about does it. Is there any other final thoughts you have on this game this upcoming weekend?
No, I think I spilled it all out on the table, but that's, again, I'm still smiling at the fact that you and I have the same score prediction. Jordan, that's a sign, my friend.
I know. Hopefully it works out well. And if it is 37-34, that's going to be absolutely insane. The other guy I know also picked 37-34. Cannot wait for this game. Does not seem real that we are in this situation right now. I know I keep on saying it is insane. So, Frank, can you kind of tell some of the listeners we can follow you on social media and your podcast as well?
Yes, the name of my podcast is called the Unofficial Bengals Podcast, and you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Cincy Bengals Pod.
I would definitely put the links in the description below. I was talking before the show started. I was able to check out one of your recent episodes. Really, really nice content. You all should definitely check that out for a great analysis on the Bengals. Great job and everything. I'll definitely, check out your recent video podcast episode you posted a day or so ago. Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to, follow me, the Sports Dude Hines Show on Instagram, the S Dude Hines Show on Twitter. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. I would really, really appreciate it. And see you all next time on the Sports Dude Hines Show.